Hey everyone, and welcome to this brand new Minecraft world where I'm going to attempt to document my journey through this world in a series of videos. The reason for that's pretty simple. Often when I've been playing in a world for a really long time, I find myself wishing I could go back to the beginning and revisit the very first builds and the progression and all that stuff. That's really difficult to do if you don't document it, because the only thing that's really left for you to look at is the final product, which, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun to look at, but for once that I'm thinking about this right as the world is starting up, let me make an effort to try and actually document what's happening as it's happening. And to be completely honest, this is not the first time I've attempted to do this. But usually I get really caught up in rewatching the clips or whatever it is and finding that it just looks unwatchable to anyone who's not me or uninteresting. So I think I've allowed myself to let go of that a little bit and just accept that really I'm doing this for myself and so that I can myself revisit it. So it doesn't matter if anybody else cares what's going on in the video. But of course, as long as I'm making this into a video, I wanted to make sure it's at least coherent to anybody who does decide to drop in. So I will try to explain a little bit what I'm doing in terms of why and how I'm building farms and such. So yeah, that being said, let me tell you a little bit about what my idea is here. I'm going into this with the idea that I want to build a base in the Nether. And it's not the first time I've tried this. I tried it in a single player world, but I really quickly lost interest because it was a single player world and I had a multiplayer server where I could go play with my friends. So now that we're starting up a brand new multiplayer server, let me try to actually go with this idea since I do get to play with my friends. And I'm hoping that my base will essentially serve as the Nether hub, allowing people to easily travel through the Nether and, even if they just need to go through the Nether to get from point A to point B on the overworld, hoping my base will be able to do that for them easily. So that's the idea I'm working with, and let's get started. After that point, I got started doing just the typical Minecraft starter things. I punched my first tree, made my first crafting table, found some out-of-place dirt and stone I could collect, because I did decide I was going to be stubborn about this, and as much as possible, outside of building the portal, avoid touching the overworlds, including gearing up and building tools and that kind of thing. So as a result, I ended up stuck on a pillar in the middle of the night without any tools and had to punch my first zombie to death with my bare hands because, yeah, didn't bring enough tools to deal with that in a sensible way. With that achievement under my belt, I did find this little pen existing in the village, so I did decide to round up a few of every animal that was sort of around in the nearby plains. Just a little public service, making it easy to get your starter animals from this little pen if you needed to. So I ended up with a few cows, and luckily there were carrots, so I was able to grab a couple pigs as well. And I did have to travel a little bit further for the sheep, but I did find a couple sort of on the other side, the other meadow. And as long as I was rounding up animals, I did grab a couple chickens and just toss them in there. But as you can see, these are all the boring versions of animals that have been in the game for forever, that you can just get in the regular plains around here. I'll leave it up to anybody else on the server if they want the fancy versions of cows, pigs, sheep, and all those things. Are there fancy sheep? I don't think so. But if they want those, they can go out and adventure and find those for themselves. But for now, this is just a little of public service to make animals easy to grab for anybody who needs them to get started. So at this point, I've just been working on trying to place the portal. So this is what I've more or less landed on. Right now I'm just looking at it in Freecam. But I did like shift this portal like up and down, left and right a little bit, trying to get it positioned correctly. Wait, did I say that it was a portal I was building? Okay, well, anyways. I'm building a portal and I wanted to get the positioning right. So I had my eye on this little island and I wanted to get in sort of the frame as quickly as possible before anybody jumped on here and started building right where I planned for this to go, because of course I want it to be a central location that's easy to use as a nether hub. But this is where I've landed. I think it's looking pretty decent. There'll be some room to shift it a little bit as I go on, but I'm going to have to build that island up to the portal, so I didn't want to commit to something. You know, I didn't want to start building it really low and then finding out that that was not going to work. So this is what I've landed on. This is where the portal's going to go. So yeah, I think it's time to go get stone and stuff to build this thing. Okay, so shooting this bit out of sequence a little bit, so hopefully I'm not going to reveal too much that was added since then. This path obviously wasn't there, and you might see the little hut. My dad actually came onto the server one night and had fun building that, but I don't think that's too much of a spoiler to reveal that. But yeah, so I realized I was talking about gathering stone, the little bridge my sister built. Typically, you build your first starter mine in whatever ends up being sort of the basement of your starter build, or in a little cave near your starter build, because it's convenient. But my starter build was a portal, and it didn't really make sense, and I was really hung up on this idea of don't touch the overworld. So just thought it would be interesting to show you guys, since I didn't actually manage to get any footage of me doing this. My mine is actually in a weird location down here, where I found this little puddle of water and I swam down it enough to see that it led down near deep slate level here. And so I decided to just come in here and call this my strip mine. And yeah, so I had these little strips going sort of along this level where there was deep slate and stone, which was convenient because I needed both of those as well as the andesite that was in these. You can see there I dug out some granite, which I didn't need, but that's okay. And I did go a little bit down because I needed to find some tuff, which was actually tough to find. And I did actually end up coming up because I was looking for the tuff. I ended up with quite a lot of deep slate. Aha! So I came up a little bit so that I would get a little bit more stone, and I did find these guys, these stone diamond guys, which I did not touch because, as anybody who has played a lot of Minecraft knows, these are some of the rarest blocks now since the Caves and Cliffs update. So I was waiting to get Silk Touch, and I may not even collect these. Maybe I'll leave them for someone else to grab if they want them. But that was my mining excursion, and yeah, I ended up with all the deep slate and stone I could need. I realized as I was putting these clips together that I really have no footage of me building up the stony base of the portal, especially not a time lapse or anything, which would have been fun if I had thought about it. But what I do have is this little clip I'm sharing with permission from my sister, where I came to visit her to see what she was up to very early game. And she had mostly been adventuring, gathering trees and such. And yeah, apparently killing a lot of fish. And as much as there wasn't a lot to see in terms of things she had built at this point, it's always fun to see other people alive and doing things on the server, getting settled. Makes it feel a little less lonely and gives you an excuse to come out from your projects a little bit and take a breath and see what other people are getting up to. So, not much to see yet. She has built more since then. But yeah, it was a nice little visit. By this point, I had built up a lot of the stone frame for the portal, and I was putting in the obsidian sort of as I went with a little dinky lava generator. But I did get there. As you can see, I'm putting in the last block. And of course, I did it this way because I was trying to limit myself, so no diamond pools. This is the way I had to do it, and I did get there. And at this point, I had actually built up most of the stony frame for the portal. There was one block I was missing, however, that I knew I would have to get and would be a little bit tricky. And I decided that was the next order of business. Sea lanterns. And that, of course, meant guardians. And my initial plan was sort of to brute force this with stone axes and just try to kill him and get out and die as many times as it took. But very quickly, I realized how unbearable that was going to be. So I did swim around and found just enough magma blocks in the nearby ocean floor to build this little magma block platform and the world's least efficient guardian farm. But it did what it needed to do, which was pull down guardians that were swimming over it onto the platform where they eventually died, and I'd be able to swim out from the little hut I had built next to it to come out and collect their bits. And it was very slow and very inefficient, but I died a lot less, and I did eventually get enough parts to build the few lanterns I needed, at which point I was good to go back home and finish up. And once again, this would be something I didn't really get much footage of. You can see a little bit on the side there. I spent time building up the island, and then I had to spend time breaking down the little connection to the island to make it well and truly an island. And once that was done, I was ready to start looking at putting the finishing touches on the terraforming just to make it look a little bit more natural. And my sister actually came over and helped me do some of this once I had done a lot of it. It's always nice to get a second pair of eyes when you're doing this kind of stuff, because the final little touches, it's really easy to be like, I'm done, and you don't want to do them. But it makes a huge difference. So she came in and helped me build these little rocky formations and little spots of moss and such on the island after I had done the main staircase and the various runes and such. She did also decide to take it upon herself to dirtify the riverbed, which was mostly helpful because it ended up looking really good, except for the bit where she made a skeleton spawny hole, which claimed my life several times. But that ended up being sorted easily enough, and it was time to start packing for the Nether, because I really didn't intend to bring most of this stuff with me. Only sort of a couple things that were kind of more special, like the axolotl, and a couple things to get myself started, so various saplings, and that kind of thing. And at that point, everything was done except for lighting the portal and going through to the Nether. So I invited Cakes and Cookies over to come bid me farewell and watch the momentous lighting of the portal. And off I went. If you're curious about the seed or what mods and tweaks we used, you can find that in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.